Bob Horsefield's A Ripping Material, Part 2. I was sitting there at the window of my small bedsit with a whiskey in my hand and a fag burning out in the ashtray, looking at the busy street below. Bars, restaurants, off-licences, amateur drinkers and traffic lights all disturbing my peace and giving me more reasons to moan. Where did it all go wrong, I said to myself, as I poured another large one and carried on watching the happy faces yet to experience unhappiness of life. I wasn't always like this. Life was good at times, the early times. For 6 months now, I have been moving from town to town, finding what work I could to add to the little drinking money I had left. Meeting women helped, the last drunken ones in the pub that is. I have had time to think my life through and try repair the tears in my heart. All I have achieved in that time is a liver more damaged and a new pair of shoes. The tears still remain. I walked away from the mayhem of the town centre and took a woodland path. I see 2 people that afternoon. The first was an elderly man walking his little dog, who he kept pushing forward with his walking stick. His face told many stories. By looking at him, I pictured the war and the long life he has lived since then, but there was something more to the pain. I could see in his eyes it was something more recent. I offered him a swig from one of my 3 hip flasks I carried, thinking that would help cheer him up. He just looked straight through me, then said, "No thanks." My guess he was recently widowed. The second was a jogging girl in tight latex shorts. I looked back at her. It's fucking Sunday, I thought to myself. Sharon was one of those birds, full of spirit and life. Well, after 15 vodkas. Her first words to me at 12:30 a.m. in my current local was, "Oi, get me a vodka, love." We were both pretty much completely shit-faced by 2 a.m. when we were asked to leave after she headbutted a uni student for spilling cider on her shoes. Back to hers seemed the only thing to do as nowhere else was open. Plus her husband had a great collection of scotch, so she told me, and he wouldn't be needing it whilst doing a 5-stretch in Dartmoor prison. That morning I met her sober for the first time. I was scared. I lit a fag in bed and leaned across her to finish off her vodka from a couple of hours before. She farted and continued snoring. Back in the motor, on to the next place. 4 weeks was enough in Slough. I had been in Bristol a week and was now down to loose change. I found the cheapest, dirtiest pub I could find. That same night my luck changed whilst telling a prostitute I have wiped many of my future offspring off a whore's arse. She wasn't as impressed with that statement as I was, but it landed me a job. The next day, I was a driver, protector for house visits. It wasn't as luxurious as driving half-naked women around town sounds. Middle-class balding men demanding more time or begging for a refund because she's finished me off too quick. I took a shine to Lucy, one of the more popular girls. She was chunkier than the rest, but tall. I must have nearly crashed several times watching her skirt ride up her thighs rather than the road. I really did fall for her, but that's when life took yet another turn. She left the manor house one evening, and as she sat down in the passenger seat, I could see her face was red raw and tears falling from her eyes. Before I could stop and ask, I had kicked the door down and Mr. Jones was in the boot of my car. "I have money. We can stop this now." Rain Dogs by Tom Waits was playing in the car to drown out the shouting of Mr. Jones from the boot. I necked the rest of the scotch, got out the car and chucked the bottle over the cliff and listened for it to hit the water 200 feet below. What was I going to do with him? I'm no killer, I kept thinking to myself. I knew dropping Lucy back to the High Street brothel an hour before would be the last time I see her. I grabbed him by the scruff of his neck and dragged him to the edge. "You keep crying, you cunt," I shouted at him. "I will give you whatever you want, just don't hurt me." "Shut the fuck up," I said as my shoe connected to his skull. I think back to that night now as I'm sitting in a Manchester pub. I wanted to go back for Lucy, but what would she want with a middle-aged man with nothing but a small record collection and a car that I spend more time pushing than driving? I looked over at some bloke at the bar with a tattooed here and wonder whether he actually killed somebody. I know I haven't, but I came close. Over a whore.